So I'm going to be talking about tech today and doing a basic demo of my understanding of tech that I've learned from poi spinners, from American Tech fan spinners, as applied to the single hoop. So I'm not going to be doing fancy tricks like this that we hoop spinners might call tech. I'm going to be talking about tech in theory, tech as a structure that we can play within, a language, so to speak. So I'm going to be covering a couple topics. The first one is going to be planes. I'm going to be covering Charlie's 9-square theory, anti-spin, in-spin, different modes. I'm going to be covering the Coriolis effect, in which it talks about timing. So let's get started. So our first plane that we're going to learn is wall plane. You can see that there's a wall behind me, and you can imagine that there is a wall in front of me as well. It's behind the camera, so you can't see it. But when I think about wall plane, I think about it being as vertical as possible. You can also call this vertical plane, right? So I think about it as there's a wall 1 foot in front of me, and that there's a wall 1 foot in back of me. And I'm gonna have to keep my hoop as flat and flush as possible in order to not hit the wall. Like so. And then next is floor plane. So I'm going to be using the floor and the ceiling as a reference. So just like in wall plane or vertical plane, I'm going to be thinking about this hoop being as horizontal and flat and flush as possible, as if the ceiling was a foot above this or a foot below at all times. So I'll demo in a lasso. Or in this poly flows hoop move, it demos floor plane well. So our last plane we're going to cover is wheel plane. So wheel plane really has to do with the orientation of your body versus the orientation of your hoop. So like in the before planes, we want to have our hoop as flat as possible, but now our bodies are perpendicular to the direction of our hoop. So if you want to imagine it visually, imagine your hips as an axis point, where there's a straight line going up from either side, and every time your hoop passes it, it's perpendicular. So I'm going to demo this in an extension. So another place with wall plane where you can play is the space between your hand and your chest. I'll demo this in a buzzsaw. Like so. So when we think about planes, we're able to, either isolate the movements into being a specific plane in order to challenge ourselves and create new moves. So I really recommend either flowing only in wall plane, wheel plane, or floor plane in order to brush up on your planes and get them nice and crispy to give yourself new illusions to play with and your audience new illusions to witness. So next we're going to go into Charlie's 9-square theory. Shout out to Charlie Copter, who taught me all I know from YouTube videos that were made like 11 years ago, but are still very relevant because it's good info. So Charlie's 9-square theory maintains that as a flow spinner, and I'm thinking about this theory, I am then standing in the middle, in the center of a giant square. So the square is made up of 4 lines, right? The top base is way above my head. There's a base way up to the side of me, over here as well, line going down, and the bottom one is a horizontal line where my feet are. So we're gonna mix this up and create 3 rows and 3 columns, making up 9 squares. So the first column is going to be broken up with a horizontal line going straight out from my head. Section 1. And then section 2 is going to be broken up by a horizontal line going out from my hips. Section 2. Row 2. And then the last one is going to be broken up by the vertical line, or the horizontal line, the horizontal line going out from my feet. So 1, 2, 3 rows. So we'll break this down into columns now. So there is the vertical line going out that creates the bigger square itself, and then there's also a vertical line that goes down right beside the left of me, creating our first column. I'm standing in our center column, and then there's another line going up to the right of me that breaks down into the last column, the third column out to the right of me. So this creates our 9 squares. Square number 1 is up here to the left of my head. Square number 2 is right above my head. Square number 3 is to the right of my head. Square number 4 is to the left of me and my torso. Square number 5 encompasses my head to my torso. Square number 6 is to the right of my torso. Square number 7 is down here to the left of my legs and feet. Square number 8 is my hips down to my feet. Square number 9 is to the right of my hips and feet. So if you're able to visualize this in your mind's eye, you're able to create new patterns by visiting these squares in something called translations. So I can create a translation by going from this square, square 8, to the square right out to the right of me, which is square 9. That is called a minor translation. A major translation is when I would be skipping a square, either going diagonally or vertically, horizontally, whichever way you wish, and creating a major translation by skipping that. So I'm going to go from square 8 here to square 2. So most of you already know how to do this. It's just ghosting, but now we're applying tech theory to it. Cool, right? I always get so worried that explaining tech theory is boring, so please forgive me if this is a little bit droll. I'm trying here. So to explain tech theory in a way that more of you might relate to is explaining tech theory as brought to us by flowers. So flowers is a common move that I see a lot of hoopers doing, and it will bring us to our next topic, which is modes, which I mentioned when we started. So different modes I'm referring to create different shapes. So flowers creates a diamond. The most common 4-petal flowers creates a diamond. We can also create a box. So let me demo our diamond mode, flowers. So starting in square 8, going up to square 6, going up to square 2, over to square 4, back down to square 8. And in that motion, we create a diamond with our hoop. We create that shape, but we also can create it in a box. So I'm going to be using the corners of our 9 squares instead of the ones that are straight out across from each other, creating the diamond. So I'm going to start over here in square 7, go to square 9, up to square 3, then up to square 1, back down to square 7. Like so. And that creates a box shape. So while I'm doing this, and I'm not only creating these shapes, but I'm using a specific type of spinning that I mentioned before, called the anti-spin. And the anti-spin is a good spin to understand and have in your arsenal because it helps you create shapes as well. So the anti-spin, it really, how I understand it is by how it creates beats. So you might understand the concept of beats already if you have learned on, using doubles, the 2-beat weave. And you might wonder, I've always wondered, why is it called the 2-beat weave? It's because when you weave, the bottom of the hoop does a rotation. It hits so that the bottom does a rotation. If you think about something without a beat, that's when the hoop doesn't face downwards. So like this, that's no beat, because the hoop never faces down from its starting point. Okay. So let's count the number of beats in a 4-petal flower. 1, 2, 3, So like you saw, there's only 3 beats that are created because at the top, the hoop isn't spinning so that where the bottom was when we started faces the bottom again. Understanding this concept will help you understand those weaves that double hoopers like to do, and also creating new moves within the 9-square theory. So I'd like to move on to in-spin, which I mentioned before as well. And how you can understand anti-spin versus in-spin is a tool that we like to use called hand path. So this is the act of mapping out where you want your prop to travel without spinning your prop. So let's map out a diamond mode hand path. Like so. What's about a box mode hand path? Like so. And that helps us better understand that the anti-spin is creating an arc that is pushing up or to the left, down or to the right. So in-spin is a bit different, where we're creating the petals in these corners of where our hoop is traveling to. The in-spin is creating the little petal while we are traveling to the new box. So I'm going to start out in box 2 and travel down to box 6 with the in-spin. Like so. Let me demo with my hoop so you can better understand what I'm doing. And there you have it. So if you learn in-spin, you can put new spice to moves like flowers that you might already know and give them new life and try new things with your flow. So I want to move on to one of my favorite moves that I know you guys can do if you know the flowers, called a triquetra. So we're not creating a diamond or a box, instead we're going to create a triangle. And if you think about the fact that there's 9 squares in this theory, you can put a triangle in so many different places in these boxes. So I'm going to start with our garden variety triquetra, which is with a point facing upwards. So I'm going to be traveling from box 6 to box 4, up to box 2, down to box 6, over to box 4, up to box 2, down to box 6. So let me demo that for you. Like so. And with that, I invite you to play around with it, change the orientation, change the speed, flip it upside down, do whatever you wish, because that's the beauty of tech. You can have this structure to play within. So all these things I've showed you, hand paths, in-spin, anti-spin, the different planes, the different boxes where you can create shapes within, I invite you to play with that. View tech as a language that you can learn. You can learn the moves, use them as words that you've already known, and translate them into tech to learn them anew, to create new variations. Because I believe that tech is a language which you can create not only new words from, but understand the words that you've already learned, or the moves, the flow that you've already learned as a flow artist. So that moves us on to the final theory that I want to talk about, which is that the 9 square isn't just 9 squares, it's actually a cube. So the 9 square is very centric on you being in the middle. So you move with the cube, you move with the 9 squares. So let me show you and map out the cube for you so you can understand it like I do. So I'm standing here in wheel plane, and I am in the center column. Think of this as 3D. I'm in the center column of cubes. And then there's a column of 3 that rises up to the left of me. There's a column of 3 that rises up to the right of me. But there's also a set of 9 cubes out in front of me. 3 here, 3 right in front of me, and then 3 to the right of me. Same goes for behind me. So I have a set of 3 rising up to the left, 3 directly behind me, and then 3 to the right of me, creating a whole visual 3D plane that we can play within. So let's say I want to travel from the top corner of my cube over to the bottom corner. I can do that and create a 3D move while doing that. So the next thing that I want to talk about is tracing the grid. So not only can you use the grid as points, or the squares within the grid as points to travel to, but you can use the grid lines themselves as things to play with. So I'm going to demo this. Like so. So I'm using the 2 grid lines that are right to the left of me and to the right of me in order to play with them and to trace them in order to create this new illusion, trying to keep in wheel plane as strictly as possible and keep my flat in the plane in order to create a more effective illusion. So that's not the only way you can trace the grid. You can also use the grid lines as nice little figures to create boxes. Like so, and it becomes 3D. Alright, so that's tracing the grid, and then the final thing that I'm going to cover is the Coriolis effect. So the Coriolis effect has to do with physics, which I don't know well, so I'm going to explain it in layman hoop terms to you. So I'm going to start with the handspin. If you think about the Coriolis effect, it's basically when you extend the radius of wherever you're spinning, you're also able to slow down the speed of what is being spun. So if I think about my hand, the radius is from my wrist to the tip of my fingers while I'm moving the hoop. So the hoop will move faster because this is a shorter radius. But then if I extend up and I have the start point of the radius be my shoulder, extending out to the point of my fingers, it extends out the length of the radius, but also slows down the speed of what is happening because it takes more time for my arm to travel versus my hands. So I'll demo this for you. Handspin versus extension. As you can see, the hoop is spinning faster in my hands. And then with Coriolis effect, the theory is that the hoop is spinning 3 times slower when I extend out the radius to my shoulder. So you can play with this timing and other moves besides just a handspin versus extension in order to create more dynamic within your flow. So I'm going to demo this by using the Triquetra and by using some flowers to show you not only the Coriolis effect, but also show you how you can use translations to more seamlessly transition between moves. Like so. So that is all I have for you folks, and this has truly been tech learned by 2 prop, 1 in each hand spinners for the single hoop. So there's lots of things about timing and rhythms that I've omitted because it doesn't make sense when you only have 1 prop and 1 hand. But I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you can go, or you've taken something away from it that will be useful for you in your flow and your journey. But I just want to say thank you for watching, and happy hooping.